Hey y'all, we are here to review the latest episode of The Real Housewives of Potomac. Episode numbers went out the window a long time ago, child. I could barely tell you what season we on. I know we missed last week. It was the Sunday after Thanksgiving. I was out of town with family, minding my business, and trying to have a Thanksgiving break, honey. You know, when you're an adult, you got to make your own Thanksgiving break. So I was having a break. But I don't feel like anything happened in last episode that I really needed to have another conversation about. I feel like we've already talked about it, and we're going to touch on it a little bit more. I'm wanting to enjoy the episodes more, not only for myself, but for y'all, like to do the reviews to make it a little bit more like, ooh, fun, jazzy, poppy. But at the end of the day, like, this is the real deal, and I feel like people that are watching it have those same feelings. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to have real honest conversations about it, and we're going to work our way through this code. Child, I already feel like I sound crazy, but whatever. So we start off the episode with Giselle and Ashley and Mia, and they are shopping for this trip to Austin. I feel like this trip is just kind of randomly coming out of nowhere with no context. Like, yes, I understand that Ashley did a pride or a drag performance there, and she found it fun, and she thought it'd be fun to take the ladies there, but okay, there's really no connection there for me. I honestly would have, if I was going to have this trip, which I feel like has no substance at the outset, I would have just dropped it in at the very beginning of the season and gone from there, honestly, or maybe dropped it in maybe episode 2. But we're here now, so fine, let's get it over with. So, of course, they start, they're not just going to go shopping and go shopping. They start having a conversation about the Aneka and Wendy stuff that happened at the pickleball event. And obviously what happened there can be summed up in 3 seconds. Aneka and Wendy had a lot of back and forth. There was no resolve there. But the ladies still kind of some of the ladies still chose sides and opinions as to how they felt about something that they really don't know about. And I'm not really getting jiggy with that, so we'll get into it. Giselle kind of starts it off with, well, do you think that, Aneka was lying? And Ashley, she's in her confessional saying even though she's cool with Wendy, she still hasn't really come to a conclusion on how she feels because she feels like Aneka told the story with so much conviction. And that's a weird justification to give, because just because people tell stories with conviction doesn't mean that they're not lying. But I guess if that's what tickles Ashley's fancy. And we kind of circle out to Eddie and Wendy in the middle of this, but what we come back to, which I don't want to do too much back and forth because that's all we've been getting through in this seasons and this episode, and it was really confusing me, and I don't want to continue with that narrative. But back at at home with these people that are shopping, Giselle kind of surmises that, kind of the same thing Ashley was saying. Aneka was saying it with so much conviction and there was so much detail. And so she she says she 100% thinks that Aneka is telling the truth. I draw issue with that because, Giselle was saying it last episode as well. And there was also a portion where she was saying like, oh, Eddie don't want no smoke. Like when she was talking about Aneka's husband. And lady, like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, and it really kind of annoys me because this has always been Giselle's person and character, and you can ask anybody, Giselle never necessarily bothered me up until last season, right? Like, we all know Giselle can be messy and she'll fabricate things and say this, that, and the third and be really irritating, and she'll say anything that she just wants about her mouth. But it's always levels for me. That's the type of girl that I am. And I just feel like last season when she got to the point where she was accusing Chris of something very close to harassment, that felt weird to me. So I didn't like it. And even in this episode, she says, like, all I said was that Chris made me go into a hotel room and close the door. And that just feels so weird to me. And those are just things that I don't feel like should be said. So that's kind of when I clipped the cord with Giselle. And so going forward this season, to hear somebody forming an opinion as to the validity of a story that has to do with somebody else's culture that you're not involved in, and a religion that you're not involved in, and then even like a dark portion of a type of religion that you're also not involved in. So these are 3 things that you don't know anything about: being Nigerian, being in Wendy's family and what type of Catholicism or whatever it is that they practice, and then also the dark side of, like witchcraft and shrines or whatever of the Nigerian culture. Those are 3 things that you absolutely don't know a goddamn thing about. So why would you ever get on television and perpetuate these type of rumors and say I 100% believe them, and you don't even know what they are? You know what I'm saying? And she's saying it in that kind of like just like ha 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 type of vibe that she always does, and I'm sure that's how she's gonna pass it off if asked about it at the reunion. But these are not things that you play about. Like, these are not semantic things that you can just kind of throw out and say. So that type of stuff irritates me, and it makes me not even want to have the conversation. So I'm gonna end that part here. We're with Wendy and Eddie, and what I heard Wendy say that I thought was interesting was that she feels like Aneka came on the show or into the group or whatever with the sole motive of attacking Wendy, right? Like, she never really has much to say in the group unless it pertains to Wendy. And so that makes me believe that there's definitely more to the story, and I think it's definitely a fourth wall type of thing in terms of like Aneka coming on the show and weirdness between that. And so it makes me think like more like, okay, so what is going on? Like, obviously with the way that it's being cut, they're wanting to cause confusion. I think that the story at its base is already confusing, but I think that the editors are both chopping it in a way that's confusing to just make us have more conversation and make it seem more interesting than it is. And second, I think they're chopping it in a way because they also don't understand it. So I think when it comes to a situation like this, again, where we're talking about religion and somebody's culture, that's just not something that you play with. And I don't even think that they know what they're doing with it. So to, again, perpetuate conversation amongst us lay people as viewers to have a conversation about it, you only do that for entertainment purposes. This is a TV show, and I don't feel entertained by having conversation about somebody's culture and their religion. I'm just not like, I don't feel super excited to do that. But, you know, Giselle rounds out their conversation, going back, which I said I wasn't going to do, but I missed a point. She rounds out their conversation in this scene kind of all together by saying, you know, Wendy gave the defense that, you know, it was her mother having that conversation with Aneka or her cousin or whatever. At the end of the day, Wendy was not on the phone with Aneka. And that's my point as well. Like, they're people removed, and I've said that. But she feels like no matter who is it going on with, Wendy knows what's going on with her mom and with her husband. And she says, you know, they're all coming together to act toward this common goal of evil, which again is not something that you play with. And I think that Ashley, I've already said this too, she's kind of noticing that. So she even says like, I'm not gonna go that far. And it's just like, I can't even believe that the powers that be are allowing this to go this far. I can't even believe that Wendy and Aneka are participating in it. Like, I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm kind of just super thrown off. We get to a scene with Aneka, and, you know, they're at the doctor talking about their fertility thing, and the biggest thing here was I saw a level of humanity in her confessional, because she says, you know, she doesn't like how things ended with Wendy, and she does wish that they would have gone differently, and she wishes that she would have just pulled Wendy aside. So that's the humanity that I see, and I'm like, yes, because as the two Nigerian women on this show, I hate that you guys are even participating in this. It's so silly, and I would hate to, for me, it would feel like if it was me, the only way that I can really relate to it, there probably are other ways, but the specific way that I think of it is, if I was on the cast of all white men, and it was just me and another black man, and we come on having issues with one another that are distinct and specific to black culture, black male culture, but nobody else can relate to it, and probably not even the greater mass of our audience, but we're still getting on this show that's meant for entertainment purposes, and we're pushing that out there as a storyline, that would disgust me. So I hate that they're even in this spot. And then you're also giving other people an opportunity to form opinions about something that they really don't know anything about. So there's such a large level of ignorance as it pertains to discussing, again, this thing that's supposed to be for entertainment. It's so weird. You know, Aneka's excuse is that she brought it up because Wendy was being fake, and I guess it kind of just riled her up, so she couldn't hold it back, so she said it. Whatever. I think that Aneka fully knows, unfortunately, that this is what was going to give the entertainment for TV, and she's here for TV, and she's going to do what she has to do to entertain. So unfortunately, she's down to participate in it. Mia and Gordon go to some type of therapy or whatever, and they're discussing their money issues. The issue around, Mia discusses that she went and got an attorney at some point and discussed getting a divorce, and Gordon says he has no idea how it got that far. And for me, the needle is pushed around quite a bit because I'm just still not sure. They're not necessarily pinpointing for me a reason as to why things got hard. Mia was kind of saying like Gordon was working too much, but the flashback that they showed was of Mia working a lot and Gordon being upset that she was on the phone. But Mia's talking about where Gordon was working too much and they don't have time for their family. And then it becomes a thing of like, well, Gordon's more focused on setting up money for the family in the future, and Mia really wants him to retire, but he doesn't feel like he'll ever really stop working. The story's all over the place. I'm sure I'm not the only one that picked up on it because I'm only halfway watching it anyway. I'm sick and I'm not feeling it, and the episode's not entertaining. So I think that we can all come together and realize that the math was not mathing here, but fine, we'll take it. But I think the biggest thing here that I took was that it seems like to me, because they're not giving me a straight story, seems like to me Mia married this man thinking that there was going to be some financial stability. And I think that Gordon does a lot of financial and business ventures with family and with friends. And as of recent, those things have not been working out very well, especially with the fact that, the person that they were supposed to be doing business with is now, not alive anymore. I don't really want to use the word. So, it's gotten very serious. And I think that started to worry me on two levels, both on the financial standpoint and because it's like, these are business ventures with your family and with your friends. So who do we really trust? Like, what's really going on here? I think she feels like she signed up for something that she can never really fully get the information on because that's Gordon's life and his personal stuff that he's not really disclosing, but it's affecting her because she's an extension of that family and because those are also her shared finances. So I think that Mia feels like in this marriage, she's in a sticky situation where she's never fully going to have the information. And so that bothers her and she wants out. And that will make sense to me. I did think it was cute that when they got on the trip, Ashley split up the vans. This is the fun housewives stuff that I feel like we can get, but we only got this portion of it. But I like that Ashley split up the cars into, the zodiac signs, and, the water can go anywhere. So she split it up into fire, into earth. That was fun. We didn't get too much into the dynamic of who was in each car, so I didn't really make a note of it. Obviously, we know Robin was in the car with Candace, but that didn't really go anywhere. We got a lot of talk because it started in the car and then it continued at the hotel in a group scene. And Karen is talking about this pie analogy as to how, this is supposed to be a fun housewives thing. I'll give them credit for that, but it's not fun. I just feel like the undertone of the episode is not fun. There's no context. There's no meat in the episode. This episode doesn't even give me pie. Like, there's no pie feeling. There's nothing happening. And so this just doesn't give me anything. I don't want to hear this. Like, where's the substance? But fine, Karen's talking about how, Robin hasn't been honest, and the more honest that she gets, the more pie that she'll unthaw from her freezer. Girl, whatever. I will say that Karen was trying, though, towards the end of the episode, because we kind of get the ladies together, and Karen is telling everybody but Mia and Robin, and Karen is telling Giselle, like, I feel like you've been pretty quiet. So this, for me, kind of breaks down the fourth wall starting to already, because I feel like they haven't been getting anything when they've been filming. And I think part of that is because a lot of the ladies have not been participating, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as well. So I think she points to Giselle first because Giselle is kind of one of the figureheads of this cast, and she's also an OG. So she tells Giselle, like, I feel like you've been really quiet when Candace has been around. And they have a small back and forth where, Candace is kind of just like, there's nothing there. There's nothing that's going to happen. We're not going to move forward. Giselle has the audacity to say that things that Candace said were nasty and affected her family. So for the safety of her family, she's not going to mess with Candace anymore. And Candace says, well, actually, Giselle hasn't been talking to me because she feels like if she doesn't talk to me, then I won't be around anymore, meaning that she's going to ice me out of this show, but that's not going to work. And also what happened was you talked about my family and it actually affected my family. So it didn't go anywhere. And I don't think that it will. I saw a lot of talk on the Twitter about this being an issue because we obviously saw this trickle down in Atlanta. I feel like it happened amongst a longer span of time on Atlanta, where you saw the distrust between the ladies break down, and then they didn't really want to participate in film anymore, and there were no genuine relationships. I can agree with that. I can agree with seeing that coming, but I don't think that that's gonna happen right now, and I don't necessarily agree that me as a real person in real life, I'm the type of person, if I don't rock with you, then I don't rock with you. I'm not going to talk to you. I understand that it's going to work differently on a reality TV show because you need these parts to work together in a specific type of way. But I don't know if I necessarily agree that it has to be like that within all dynamics. So I don't necessarily agree that Candace and Giselle have to interact with each other for the show to work. I just don't feel that way. I think that Giselle can do her own thing and be her own personality. I think that Candace can do her own thing and be her own personality. But I don't think that we have to force them to interact with each other for this to work. I think that there are other issues at play on this show. I believe that people want to see them interact because they know that that's going to be more friction and more conflict. And that's going to provide more entertainment for the show, because there's no way that you feel like, even if they decide to bury the hatchet and interact in the future, there's no way that they're going to be friends. So I feel like people just want them to interact for more beef, and I don't think that that's necessary. Like, I think that there are other ways that we can go about doing this show. While they're doing that, though, Mia and Wendy are taking a walk, and I kind of clocked this right away. The common thing there is for them to have the conversation about the fact that they have that commonality that, you know, they've had a family friend or whatever you want to classify it as that they did business with, and that person stole money from them and then ended up, you know, taking their own life. So it's very similar situations, and it is ironic that it's happened to two people on this cast. So of course they can have that conversation. Do I necessarily feel like it felt authentic that it happened where Mia was like, oh, I want to talk to Robin about this? I don't know that I got that impression. Do I feel like it pushes the narrative of the show forward at all? No, not necessarily. But I think that it made sense on a very surface level, but I don't know that it takes us anywhere. When we get back, we can noticeably see, which I thought was interesting that they even kept that in the edit. There's about a minute where they're sitting there doing nothing. It kind of just felt like everybody's just kind of doing this and like chewing their food and like looking around. And so Karen brings up the exact same point that she was just talking about before our little break. And she says to Giselle again, I'm going to take it back to Giselle, like, you know, you have been quiet. And she gives a different example, and she talks about the pickleball event. And from there, Giselle says, I guess that's their segue into talking about Aneka and Wendy, so fine. And she says, well, you know, the witchcraft thing really took me aback. So this would have been a great opportunity for us to get some closure on that, at least to understand what happened so that we can go to the next step of that video game, whether that be Aneka and Wendy get along or they still hate each other. At least we could have moved forward in terms of details and background, which we did not. But Aneka starts explaining herself. It gets very super duper choppy. Wendy's first line of defense was, you keep talking about a phone call that you were not on, which was also my first line of defense. So I think that that's a fair point, because I do feel like Aneka is talking a lot. Well, her whole thing depends on a conversation that happened between Leve and Ivy. And those two people are not Aneka and Wendy. Does it still involve them in some type of way? Sure, but it's not a direct conversation between Aneka and Wendy. So why don't we have a conversation between Aneka and Wendy that we can drive off of? Because there's so many other details that are being scrambled that we cannot get to the bottom of, because nobody here, including the people in that conversation, Aneka and Wendy, and the ladies on the cast, including production, including the editors, including the network, including the viewers, none of us were there for that conversation between Ivy and Levy. So why are we talking about it so much? Giselle breaks in, though, which leads me to feel more that, okay, this is definitely a producer plant, because Giselle's like, well, your mom, talking to Wendy, she's like, your mom did do the same thing to Mia. So I'm like, oh my God, this is all a scheme that Todd set up. Because I'm like, I never even thought, and I said this, I never even thought that we were going to talk about the thing that happened with Mia and Wendy's mom went through, because it was a social media thing, and it happened kind of like close to last year's reunion, and it was very flyby. Like, it just kind of was what it was. And I never even remember what she said, but Wendy pulls it up and reads it verbatim. And there was mention of like fire and thunder and the Holy Ghost, but it had nothing to do with like witchcraft and shrines. And that's just weird. Like even me being outside of the culture, I would never say like, this still sounds weird and I don't know. Like that's not my place. I think that that's so disrespectful and it's so weird that we're actually, yes, making this a storyline, and I'm so just like disgusted by it. So that connection really goes nowhere after Wendy reads it and she's like, that still has nothing to do with witchcraft, which it doesn't. Like, yeah, it was differently stated and we probably don't understand it because we're not Wendy's mother and we're not Nigerian. We don't know how she does things. But I wouldn't jump and say, oh, but it's definitely witchcraft and she definitely has a shrine. Like, that's crazy to me. And even when, because Mia showed up before Wendy even read it, and Wendy was like, I'm just reading this because Giselle brought it up. Mia was literally like, I forgot about it. So it's like, yeah, we're talking about stuff that doesn't even matter. But finally, which I didn't even mind because I'm like, we know this doesn't make any sense. So I think that we were going to have to break that fourth wall. Aneka starts just straight up saying it like Wendy basically didn't want me on the show. Like she had a problem because she felt like, I guess she told her sister that I was using her name to get on the show. That sounds believable. That makes sense. Fine. And I wish we could have cut to Wendy and Wendy would have gave us some context on that, but we don't really get it. Wendy starts talking about how her sister Ivy used to be close with Lebe, who is, I guess, Aneka's cousin. I still don't goddamn know. But somebody that's related to Aneka, and they're not friends anymore. I guess they had a falling out. So it's really, the root of it, as Wendy is saying, is really an issue between those two. And Aneka is like, it's not an issue between those two, and it's an issue between us. But I'm trying to figure out how. They keep saying each of them at different times that they don't even know each other. And again, Aneka's argument is dependent on a conversation between Ivy and Lebe. And then that's the only thing common that they have is Ivy and Lebe. That's it. But you know, Aneka does give us, I guess, another glimpse because she says, well, you're also saying you don't know Lebe. I guess she felt like Wendy was saying she didn't have her own independent relationship with Lebe, but we get a flashback to Wendy's, what was it, christening of her daughter, I think it was, where they wore the all pink and Lebe was there and Wendy said what she acknowledged. There was like I remember there were women there and she was saying like different things about the women that she would want to see in her daughter. I didn't think that was necessarily far-fetched because that was 4 years ago. And if Lebe did have a relationship with Wendy's sister, and she's a Nigerian woman as well, and this is a Nigerian event for Nigerian women, then I can see her using her as an example to say, oh, you have this quality that I know of, it's good for my daughter. That's not Wendy saying, oh, we're best friends and we've had a great relationship. I do think that it means that they may have had some type of relationship, but I was not hearing Wendy deny that. So I'm not grasping the importance. I'm really not. And I wish that we could just get to the bottom of it. But I feel like I said, the editors and the producers are playing off the fact that it's so confusing. So they're like, we can mix and screw it even more and drag it out and make this a whole storyline. And it is flopping so damn hard. Like, it's so terrible. And there's nothing entertaining about it. So at the end of the day, I definitely, like I said, feel like there's more to the story. I just can't bring myself to care because I don't think that they're giving me anything to push me to care. I think that they're trying to make the confusion be entertaining, and it's not entertaining because I don't feel like this is something where we should just shoot the shit and be like, oh, well, maybe this, maybe that. That's not our culture. That's not our business. And so I don't feel comfortable just like throwing out allegations and saying, well, I believe this, I don't believe this. If we're going to have a conversation about whether Wendy wanted her on the show and whether there's a weird jealousy and whether they used to know each other and something weird happened, there was a weird falling out, let's have a conversation about that. But it never should have started with the whole witchcraft and shrine stuff. Like, that is in a conversation between Ivy and Lebe. Like, that's crazy at the end of the day. I know that we kind of needed that segue, I guess, but there was a different way to address it and also not drag it out. Because again, we didn't get that tidbit and the break of the fourth wall until the last 5 minutes of the episode. And it's now been 4 episodes that we've been discussing Wendy and Aneka. We got to do better. So I did not enjoy this episode. I feel like there was no reason to watch it. And like I said, I would love to enjoy it a lot more and be able to enjoy this review a lot more. But, you know, maybe we're meant to be having a different conversation. So I'm sorry that I missed last week, y'all, but it wasn't nothing to talk about. I'm sorry that I have this cold. I'm sorry that this episode sucked. But we are going to keep seeing what we can do. And I will see y'all in the next one.